Good evening. We are here at the Yellow Springs Board of Education October 12th meeting. The board was in executive session, started at 6 o'clock for personnel issues, and now we're moving into our regular agenda at 7 o'clock. And we don't need to do any kind of roll call or stuff at this point because we've been in session. So 1.3, the approval of the minutes for September 13th and September 14th. Is there a motion?
Second.
All right, anybody have any issues with either one of these? Any question or anything? Okay, roll call. Sylvia?
So my technical question is, it's both of them together, but I wasn't at one of them because I was away. I was doing the hospital thing in September. So what do I do?
You were here by phone.
I was here by phone, part of this.
I put you here by phone and as an attendance, but you just couldn't vote on anything.
Okay.
So I
So
count
that's
you here for
fine.
both.
So then yes. I just want to be sure.
Yeah, good idea.
Steve?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Aida?
Yes. All right. I'd like to acknowledge people who are present and ask that you sign in if you haven't. There's a tablet over there. Hi. And moving on to communications, 2.1. We have a letter from James Walk dated October 3rd, 2017. And that's it. And I'd like to recognize any of the people in the audience who might wish to address the board. All right. Mr. Horowitz.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to speak from two of my roles, and I don't want to muddy the water, so I'm going to start as the president of the Yellow Springs Education Association. My name is Eli Hurwitz. I'm the president of the Yellow Springs Education Association, and I'd like to say how proud I am of how hard the educators in our buildings have been working to kick off this year in amazing and wonderful ways. This weekend you can come hear ideas the sophomore class has for dealing with the two major problems facing the Glen, trash and graffiti, that we set up right in front of the Little Art Theater. The ninth grade is working on building the empathy of our students as they address problems the students are finding in our school, which is a really big step for the students to really look at empathy in a new way. And our senior class is regularly now talking about the radio station that they're going to be working to start in their senior English class. So in the library I'm hearing about this quite a bit, so I'm really proud of our teachers who I've been told by more than a dozen teachers how exhausted they are and how proud they are of the work that they're doing. Yellow Springs teachers are proving that students are more than test scores. Now I'm going to step out and then step back as a community member. As a community member, a parent, and a teacher, I have a vested interest in the Yellow Springs schools, their students, and their facilities. I would like to use this opportunity to ask the board to consider building a K-12 facility at the high school property. Our schools are in need of more than a renovation. I think putting a K-12 in the same campus would provide our students with powerful learning opportunities, too numerous to talk about in our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eli.
All right, anybody else? All righty. 2.3, schools in action. Oh.
So Steve is sick, I just learned.
Oh.
So I guess we'll have to get him on.
That was my idea.
Yeah, in a future month.
Oh, okay, so we're
Can I just chime in? So Steve Lively, for those who don't know, is the satellite coordinator for the Green County Career Center, who has been working for now 2 years, or is it? Yes, 2 years. In our facility on engineering projects of one kind and another. And I thought, since I'm also the board representative to the Career Center, that it would be fun to have Steve come and talk about some of what he's been up to. Alas, I didn't realize he was sick tonight, so that's too bad. But he gave a presentation to us at the Career Center a few months ago, and it was great. It was whiz bang. I mean, the stuff that he and the students are doing are, it's really fun. It's really terrific. So maybe we'll get him another month.
all right. Thanks. 2.4, administrative reports.
We should probably start with Matt.
Okay,
Tim's got a lot to say
very good.
today, yeah.
Good evening.
Hi.
Lots of things going on. This is, there are projects launching right and left, you know, in every grade level right now. Some projects have been ongoing, but it seems like right now is a prime time for a lot of our classrooms to launch into projects that you'll be seeing at exhibition night, basically. So lots of good things happening in the building. Just a few, I think, things of note. The bike walk to school day that we participated in, we do it twice a year, but in the fall is the International Bike and Walk to School Day. And it's awesome. It's a wonderful effort. And you know, when you have 68% of your students walking or biking, it's you feel really proud of that effort. So I think that's something to mention. Also want to give thanks to Chamber Music Yellow Springs for bringing wonderful musicians to our school. We usually have 2 to 3 concerts a year because of their generosity and our partnership with them. So we had that recently at the beginning of the week. It was wonderful string quartet. It's based out of New York, the Calidor String Quartet, and the kids loved it. And then some other things that are just happening is that, you know, we've really been focused on maker spaces this year. We have 2 or 3 new facilities, resources for students and teachers. So we've had little mini projects launch in both of the maker spaces so far. The wood shop, we had a butterfly enclosure that we made there with a small group of students, and then recently we did the recording studio. We launched that with some teachers recording a really cool song, and they're going to use it as a hook activity for a project they're doing in 3rd grade. So that's great. So I'm really excited that these are that we're able to use these resources now, and they're ready to go. And one more thing, I think I'm training about 13 or 14 teachers tomorrow how to use the recording studio. So that's going to be fun.
It's a great thing.
It's a great thing, and they were super into it. And I should have put a little a link to the song because it's actually really good. I mean, I was impressed by how much they brought to it. So so yeah, things are going well. Lots of great learning opportunities happening, and you know, we're really busy. And tomorrow's a good day for teachers to plan and kind of get some work done that they can't normally get done. So I know they're gonna work hard tomorrow as well.
All right. So Tim, do you want to just start with this piece and briefly, and then go into the other thing?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll just take 2 minutes for my typical report. You had it ahead of time, so you had a chance to read through it. A lot of great things going on. As I looked at it today, I can't believe I forgot to talk about Into the Wild. Our 7th graders are just, journeyed 60 miles over hill and dale. But up here, there's advisory period. We're piloting that on our late start Wednesdays this year. Starting to explore our graduate profile that look at those 5 attributes that we think a Bulldog should be able to graduate with. And it's far more than just academic rigor. It includes, I think maybe the most important one is agency, so that one can manifest resources both internal and external to accomplish the things that they want to do. Some people talk about being grit, etc. It's even more than that, I think. But there's professionalism, collaboration, and innovation as well. We all have school-wide rubrics for the first time ever as a building to work on this stuff, so that's what we're kind of working around with that piece. And then the second part is just talking about the Bulldog theater program. It's a new framework for how the fall plays will go. There's so many kids doing theater, and last year we tried to put them all on stage at once, and this year we're kind of rethinking it and putting sort of underclassmen, if you will, and then juniors and seniors in one project and underclassmen in a different project. So there's a link there. Yellow Springs News has something that's pretty clear about the ticket prices, and each show will be shown for 4 days in a row only, starting in October 31st.
26.
There you go. Okay. Can't
So
see so well.
the agenda. Tim's also talking about the 8th grade trip and College Credit Plus. So if you want, we'll just go forward with that. Is that right? Okay. Let's do the 8th grade trip first. Let's do the easy one first.
Yeah, it's quick. So this looks almost identical to the ones we presented to you probably over the last 4 years or so. We're still using the same tour agency with the same tour guides, the same buses, the same protocol of still staying in Marriott hotels of some kind, still trying to get to the hotel rooms late, so they're tired and they hit the hay soon. You can see the full list of there. This will not be its final itinerary, as we're still trying to figure out if we might be able to get to the Holocaust Museum or the Museum of African American History. Oh, that's not the name of it, but it's the new one that just opened up a year and a half ago. Tickets were impossible to get last year, which made the Holocaust one easier to get, which is a hard one to get into. But you'll see right here, I think the only thing different is you'll notice on Friday evening, if you remember, we went to New York in addition to go see a Tony Award-winning play. This is actually a regional piece called The Train Running, and it's a single-man show about the Japanese internment camps. And I understand it's supposed to be extraordinarily powerful and be going to Broadway. It's that powerful.
So let me kind of say that the costs and tickets for that performance have been completely paid for by a generous donation from Miguel's Tacos, which is a taco place in town, Miguel Espinosa. He is 50% of the profits on Wednesdays to the schools. And he's already raised enough at this point to support all the kids' tickets for this. And so we really appreciate the work Miguel's done. And thank you, Miguel, if you're watching.
Yeah. Wow.
Tacos on Wednesday.
On Wednesday.
So,
Any questions about that?
Mm-mm. Very good.
Want the next one?
yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Do you want to switch places or do you want to
No,
stand
no,
up?
if you don't mind.
Just let me know when you want me to click and I'll do that.
So,
For the cord, sorry.
you bet.
Oh, yeah.
So, I timed this to 4.5 minutes. All right.
Go.
So, my assumption is, and I know that you guys have had some understanding of what this is about, but I want to kind of give an overview. And through some legislative changes, Yellow Springs High School, our grade point average, our class rank, and other things have been really unduly impacted by the College Credit Plus program. So specifically, there are a lot of curricular choices in Yellow Springs schools when you're in the high school. Two, the traditional program, but you can also do College Credit Plus. And that is like the former PSEO program, which is where you can earn high school credit and college credit at the same time. That could be outside of the school building at Clark State or Red State, or it could be inside with some of our teachers who are also adjunct, where they get college credit for taking the class inside the school. All right, so it's some nice opportunities. However, there's a thumb on the scale. All right, and I want to talk about specifically 3 short ways that they are. Number 1, eligibility for this CC Plus program now is actually for any student grades 7 to 12. That's all I'm saying. The second piece is that a 3-credit college course, formerly under PSEO, would take a 5-credit college course to equate to 1 high school credit. So you can take English 100 for a semester at Clark State or Sinclair or Red State, and that counts to the equivalent of English 11 AP 7. And I'm telling you, they're not equivalent. Number 3, there's some legislation misapplication of our honor age. So if you take an advanced placement class in our school and you get a 96% or higher, you earn an H designation. And what that means is instead of your A being a 4.0 on a 4.0 scale, it's worth 5.0. It's heavier. It's worth more. The thing about CC Plus, because legislatively they say that colleges don't give out pluses and minuses, and that means that any CC Plus course that you take at Wright State, Sinclair, wherever, that 90% automatically qualifies for an A. So now any A college course earns a 5.0 weight on it. So inherently unfair. And so what does this mean? It means that GPAs now are apples and oranges. They just aren't the same. So if the GPAs aren't the same, when we go to class rank, you basically take all the GPAs and you stack them from the highest down to the lowest, and that's the class rank. So it tosses class rank into real disarray. And that's based upon valedictorian and salutatorian. So that's typically been the highest GPA and the second highest GPA. So that is now kind of apples and oranges. So we have a solution set combining apples and oranges.
I'm very impressed.
Thank you. From the culinary
Really, I'm
program.
just dazzled.
There we go. So there are 4 basic things, and We want to retroactively follow CC plus grading policy, and I'll talk a little bit about that. We want to drop class rank in the school and join more than 50% of America's high schools. We want to shift Val and Sal to kind of a cum laude kind of honor system, and then class speakers are chosen from a pool. So the first one to be specific about it is that since the CC plus policy has started, especially the year 15, 16, and 16, 17, we want to go back. Any kid who earned an A in CC plus and in AP, that they would earn a 5.0 on the weighted scale. So that means that all these students who earn a 90% or higher would get that weighted grade on there. Number two, we want to drop class rank. A third of Ohio schools don't use class rank. Ohio's actually behind most other states. We called Cornell admissions. They said well over 50% of their applicants don't have a class rank. We called Oberlin, similar things, Miami and OSU. They just said class rank just doesn't fit into our thing really so much. We also want to make sure we shift that singular Val and Sal to a more additive academic celebration. So students who have grade point averages, basically 3 bands. If you have a 4.15 and up or so, we suggest a summa cum laude, magna cum laude for 4 to 4.14, and cum laude for 3.75 to 3.99. So students, instead of competing against themselves, are competing against their freshmen. And that seems to be a far healthier way to celebrate kids if GPA is still so important. Next, and this is the last one. We want to choose the 2 speakers instead of being the Val and the Sal. Any student who qualifies or fits under these 3 bands, or the cum laude, magna, and summa, would be eligible to propose and pitch a speech. It would be a teacher and student committee, and we would decide the top 2 that we want to celebrate at graduation, and it would be expected that those students would present those presentations at graduation.
Admirably done.
Wow.
Thank you.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yes, bravo.
Nice.
So first thing I want to say is I have been a college professor now for 20 plus years. We give out pluses and minuses all the time. So
Right.
I have no idea where that particular bit of legislative
Yeah,
wisdom
right
came
state
from.
doesn't, so I
Right
think
state
there's a
doesn't,
lot of
right, so,
variability, yeah.
OSU, Miami.
It's
we do.
ABC, no pluses and minuses.
Could you go back to a proposed solution? There we are. So you're going to retroactively rejigger some grade point averages and then institute this for the students this year. In doing so, do you have any sense of either what numbers or what percentages of a class are going to fall now under this new system?
Yeah, we have some sense of it.
Okay.
We've kind of looked at it. It's more than 2 that fits under summa. But you know, when we kind of applied it to other classes, just to sort of get a feel for it, you know, there's some variability.
Yeah, I guess really all I'm asking, the reason I'm asking the question is because of whether 4.0 to 4.14 is the right parameter for the middle honor, and I guess that a little bit depends on how many students that would then generate who would fall under that. That's really all I'm sort of wondering about.
Right. So we're trying to do some math modeling with this to
Yeah.
sort of see, but it does change from year to year.
Right.
I think what you'll be asked to maybe consider as a first reading tonight is not necessarily the specifics of these, but moving in general to it. And as we sort of refine and fine it down, I think it'll be something that's suitable.
Yeah.
So did you have something?
Oh, just a clarifying question, you mean you don't do plus or minus for anything, or just final course grades?
Final course grades.
Oh, that's interesting. No, I'm just commenting on this, it seems like you've done, I mean, I was doing some catch up on this, because some of this happened when I had to be out of town for some family stuff, and reading and then talking with you all about the process you've been through, it seems like a lot of really good thought has gone into how to try to get a handle on this, because otherwise, left alone with the changes, it seems like it could move in a really problematic direction, so thank you.
Yeah, I would second that. I think this is a really terrific and elegant way to take what was otherwise a somewhat onerous and maybe even a little confusing set of state mandates and turn it into something that really, I think, will serve us very well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Very cool. You can give those kinds of reports anytime.
Yeah,
Holy smokes.
And I think what I'll add to what Tim said is, so a lot of this is all done through the AG's administrative guidelines, but there's really only one policy, which is something that probably needs to shift a little bit, and that's on the agenda today.
All right, anybody have anything for Tim or Matt? Okay, moving into the treasurer's report, financial report.
There's not a lot to report on for the month of September, because I've just got the reports posted up there, but September is not a whole lot that usually goes on in September anyway. We generally received our taxes, our second half taxes, and we won't receive the income tax until October. And we did get our homestead rollback credit from the state paid in September, which is a very timely payment. And that's always helpful because when you're doing trend analysis with your cash balance and such, it's always nice to receive that somewhere around the same month. So the only thing that stood out to me when I was reviewing my reports is that if you look at, let's go to, keep going. There. That's one with the small letters. You can't really see it. September I have under restricted state a negative $21,000. But in July, we had a posting for $26,000, and what that was is just that they posted to the wrong account. It was something that's supposed to be under other local. It's tuition payments that came in on our foundation. It somehow got posted to restricted state money, but it is local money that comes from other school districts. So what I did is in September move that from where it was posted in July and put it into the proper account. So if that was standing out to anybody, I just kind of wanted you to know why. And then if you go back up to the second page, and here, the second, you can see that I have our Title 6B is in the red and our Title 1 is in the red, and we didn't get our project cash request for the month of September before September 30th, so we'll receive those in October as well as the money for October, so those should not be in the red anymore this year, but I wanted you to know why those are so largely in the red this month. And then if you go back up to my notes, the only other thing I really wanted to report on, because I've been working on the 5-year forecast, and I just want to spend a couple minutes talking about the 5-year forecast, is our grants that we received during the month of September. Jack Hatter wrote a Martha Holden Jennings grant for Into the Wild 2 for $5,180. So that, as soon as we got it in, it's probably being spent anyway. And then from the YSEE, we got our clay bulldogs and pups, which is basically another round that Jody Chick had done. She had done clay bulldogs at the end of last year. And then I don't know if did Tim, okay. I don't know if she's doing something different with that money. I think since last year they did clay bulldogs, and this year they're adding the pups. Maybe they're just doing something.
I can tell you.
Oh, great.
So they've actually partnered with some of our 5th and 6th graders. So the older students, high school students, are mentors to the 5th and 6th graders. So they go together to the pot shop on Fridays. And I went down there a week or two ago and took a bunch of pictures and hung out.
Brown Potter.
Not the pot shop.
It's not called that anymore?
It is.
It is.
And the kids love
I'm
it.
sorry, it struck me.
They make pottery there. So it was just, it's awesome for all the kids to experience it, and some of our students really have opened up and like just really responded well. But the mentoring opportunities that are there are even more special, and so a lot of the high schoolers have like a mentor and mentee and that they're working with, and so it's really, it's cool. So.
And this year they're trying to make bowls for the chili cook.
So I want to thank YSE and Martha Holden Jennings for their contributions, but I want to highlight that this is the largest Martha Holden Jennings grant we've gotten so far to date at $5,000, and so that's a really great show of confidence from Dan Keenan and the guys up there north in Cleveland, so we really appreciate it.
Okay, if you go to my 5-year forecast, I brought some paper copies for you to have in front of you. And I'm just gonna briefly go over it because it always seems like it's more appropriate for me to spend. I don't know how many copies.
Here she is.
She's saying.
Oh, right there,
Okay.
okay. Carol's hiding.
Okay, well, I figured they usually want a copy, so I sent a copy over there. I usually spend more time on it in May because we're always comparing where we're going to end up for the year, how that compares to the budget, and things really start, we've already started planning for the next year. So a lot of things are determined that early, and in September, I'm just putting the figures into the system and going at the assumptions that we have. Probably since May. So just to briefly go over the forecast, the teeny tiny numbers are on that front page. And I'll just tell you some of the assumptions that I've made. I've already heard about people looking up their information on, this is called the triennial update, where there's computer generated updates for the property valuations, for the value of your homes. You don't usually get any type of notification of what that is. You usually don't know that until you receive your tax bill in January. But did you get a notification?
Yeah, I think we all got letters.
Okay, we don't get that in Park County, so I wasn't sure how they handle that here.
Yeah.
So you are made aware of what your property value is increasing or decreasing at. And it's always based on little sections of neighborhoods, how they do it and what that neighborhood seems to be doing. It seems like I've heard mostly about increases, so what that means for us is since we are at 20.01 mils this year, if values go up, they'll factor us back down and we'll hit that 20 mil floor. What our overall valuation is, I have no idea. I really won't be able to do an accurate assessment of our property taxes until I get our valuation for 2017, see what that is, and see what that's going to be at 20 mils. So right now, all I've done is put in, I looked historically way back further than 2015, just to see what a good number would be to put in there. In this economy, it's kind of hard to tell, and we haven't been at the 20 mil floor for a long time, so I just built in 2% increases during this triennial update. And then in 3 years, we will have an actual reappraisal. Updates tend to be higher than the reappraisals. So that's nothing unusual for it to be higher because it's computer generated. So my assumption for our property taxes are at about a 2% increase. And I'll know by May, I'll know by December and January where we're going to really be at. And I'll try to report on it at that time, but I probably won't update the 5-year forecast for it until May, because we will have done, if we do our negotiations this fall, there's really no reason for me to provide an update for that until it's required by the state. So our income tax, I built in 2% increases because that's been all over the board because like in 2017 we had a decrease as compared to 2016, so I built in a 2% increase just based on the fact that we've got, the last time we got a payment, it was larger than normal. So hopefully that's going to be the continuing trend with that. The state foundation is the numbers that are in the biennial budget right now. That is a 3% increase for us for this year and next year. Our funding is going to go from about it was 1,320,000 last year. It's going to be around 1,360,000 this year, and then possibly up to 1.4 million next year. So I just took that and then I flatlined the 1.4 million. That's still $300,000 to $400,000 more than what we were getting 5 years ago. So, well, actually 3 years ago. So it's still a significant increase that's being maintained for 4 years in a row. And I'm just maintaining it in the budget to see how that hopefully stays the same way. As for expenditures, I put in that number that's in the fiscal year 2018 column matches exactly what I had you approve in September for the appropriations. Now, of course, I know today there's been a couple of changes to that already, but I don't like to just adjust my budget every time that happens. So I put in what you have approved as the appropriations for the year. And then we'll see how that shakes out. And I already presented that to you, so I don't have anything to present on expenditures except that when I do the salary estimates, I put in around a 2% increase, just to not put in zero. I feel very uncomfortable putting in zero, even though everything is subject to negotiations, but I do have a 2% increase in salaries built out for the next 4 years, and then that in turn also dictates what some of the benefits are that are in correlation with the salaries. And then our health insurance, last year increased 10%, this year increased 5%. I've left a 5% increase in there. I'm not sure how it's gonna go, because 3 years prior we had a 0% increase, so that's just, you never know how it's gonna go. So I put in a 5% increase. Yeah, there's nothing else that is really unusual or I feel like I need to discuss. In this forecast, I finally show the payment of our House Bill 264 loan that we were doing when I first started here in 2010. That would be paid through 2021, and that will be done, which will be great because that'll be $75,000 that's back in our budget, even though we're supposed to be paying for that with the savings from the electrical updates that we've done. I don't know how that ages over 10 years, if that eventually starts to become less cost effective over that period of time. House Bill 264 loans have been around for a long time. I don't know that there's an actual assessment of how long-term those savings are. So it's just an interesting piece of information for you to know that we're supposed to be paying for that out of the savings, and then you can never really get your hands on what the savings are. We're in a natural gas pool. Our electric runs through the village. It's just kind of hard to tell what the actual savings are. So just for the graphs that I do, if Mario will scroll down, in summary, I have a page that just shows the cash balances for the year, what our projected receipts are, what our projected expenditures are, and what our ending cash balance would be. And then you can see we could potentially get into deficit spending sometime the 2021 year. I always hope, I don't find myself to be ultra conservative. I try to put increases in where I feel increases need to be, but this is where we're at right now, and this is what I know today. So if you look at the lines that say revenue increases and expenditure increases, you can see what my assumptions are, what they have done historically, what they're doing, what I project them to be. So I don't really feel like anything I do is completely out of line. One of the reasons we had a 5.9% increase in revenue last year is, one of the big ones was that we had an increase in open enrollment. We had, and then one of the big ones that I saw that is that we had the money that we received from the state for our excess cost billings and our catastrophic cost billings. We got 2 in 1 year. I already told you that when I was presenting in May, to let you know that. So that was a big increase in 1 year that will not carry forward. So that's why revenues would go back down. So our ending cash balance, you can see it might start hitting that curve down again. We'll have to see how that goes, constantly monitor that. The next page just shows basically how you get into deficit spending when your expenses start to increase over your revenues. And then on the last page is a graph I like to update every time I do a 5-year forecast update, which shows our salary and benefits as a percentage of revenue, because good fiscal practices to keep that between 80 and 85%, if not lower than that. When we pass the new levy, that increases your revenue, so it makes that percentage naturally go down, even though your salaries and benefits could still be increasing, which ours were. But at some point that kind of levels off because we won't receive more income, but yet our salaries and benefits are going to keep going up. So that's why even with a 2% increase and then modest increases in revenue, we start to climb back up to that 87% range. So that's just something we need to keep an eye on as well. And then if Mario scrolls down just a little bit, I submit the notes to the 5-year forecast to the state. It just kind of explains everything that I just verbally explained to you and what the district's assumptions are. So that's always can be found on the ODE website for 5-year forecast. And I will also put that on my treasurer's website. So I always put the most current 5-year forecast and some other information on my website. It's really hard to find my website, it's very embedded in our website, it's under the administrative departments. But it's something good for you to know, to always tell people, I have information out there about our 5-year forecast, our levies, fiscal year-end report, and our millage rates, and where we compare to other districts. So it's good information to have out there. So that's it.
Okay, any questions? Anybody? Okay, moving into the consent calendar financial piece, 3.2 to 3.3. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, well, we just went through the 5-year forecast, and then we have reimbursements, which are typical every year. So, anybody have? Okay, roll call.
Steve,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Aida,
Yes.
Sylvia.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Thank you also for your report, Don. Okay, moving into the superintendent's report, 4.1, updates.
So Aida, I think one of the board members asked me fairly recently to talk about sort of achievement and kind of the quality profiles. We haven't really talked about this fall yet, so I don't know if you all mind, I can pull it up and we can talk through it a little bit this meeting. It wasn't on the agenda in advance, but I think everybody's had a chance to see it at least, so we can incorporate that at the end if you like, or we can wait till November. It's sort of up to you all.
We have time.
Won't take that long.
Yeah, that was getting
We have
better.
a small.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, I'll move a little faster on these other two items.
Tim has set an admirable example.
I agree, he was on point, wasn't he? He was great tonight. He had a lot of coaching, you know. So I start off with negotiations. So we are in the second year of a 3-year contract with the YCA and OPC. And so one of the conversations I've had with the YCA president and Don is the idea and the goal of trying to negotiate in the fall for the 3rd year reopener. So if you remember, there's a reopener for the 3rd year for salary only. And so we're going to have, so Eli actually we just talked a little bit more today. But so we're trying to, so a couple things have to happen, I think, for us to be able to negotiate the next month and a half or so if we can. Number one, we have to have another board meeting, I think, to talk in executive session about parameters and, the interest of the board and where we want to move forward with it. And the second thing that has to happen is the board has to nominate 2 board members to sit on the committee. And so I know Aida's been working a little bit on that second piece, at least recently. So hopefully we'll have somebody we can nominate to do that soon. And my hope is that maybe at the end of the board meeting, when we get to the board items, to maybe find some time to have a session, especially meeting to have that executive session. So, but that's all I really want to say about that. That we're trying to move forward with it and see if we can get this completed. And we're talking about trying to get 2 days during the day. And then if we need to go further than that, we can go after school hours or in the evening or whatever it may be. And so we're seeing what we can do around that. And we'll see if we can get a date that works for everybody. So the facilities update, just quickly, I was looking back and figuring out I'm getting curious about when did we start this whole process, And it was kind of fascinating because we have been talking about facilities updates as part of the superintendent updates in the board meeting agenda since August of 2016, every single month. So that's 12, 13, 14, we're in the 15th month in a row now where we have discussed facilities updates and the facilities issue as a community in these public meetings. And so I kind of looked out from there and said, well, what's been the history of it? So then in January of 2017, the Board of Education interviewed, I believe, 3 final architectural firms and made the decision to go with Richley Architects to lead this exploration process for us. And so that was way back in January, or essentially 9 months ago, when that happened, 10 months ago. And then it was March that we had our first community forum. And so since then we've had 5 community forum/pulse meetings as a community, 5 opportunities for the community to really come out and publicly share their thoughts, feedback. We've had 3 facility advisory committee meetings. We've had one staff meeting with the entire staff, and now we're in the middle of a survey that we're giving to the community, and I think we'll probably be done with the survey within a week, and hopefully have some results soon after where we can share with the community what the feedback we got from our survey was going forward. So that'll be good to see, good to know that feedback and what we've heard. And I think it's important to note that the Board of Education has been strongly committed to listening and hearing feedback from folks for this time. And so they've intentionally not expressed their opinions one way or another on any ideas or plan ideas out there, because they really want to take the time to hear feedback from the entire community throughout this process. My hunch is that once we have the surveys back, the board will start to formulate some opinions at that point maybe, and start to think more deeply about the way forward, and based on what at that point they might feel like they have more of a complete idea of the way forward. I don't want to speak for the board, but I just think that's what I've heard, at least I think in discussions with you all. So that'll be good. I think the other thing that happened recently, so last night we were asked to go to another meeting where there were some really great presentations last night about different pieces of this facilities issue. And so Aida was there, Sylvia was there, I attended, and Matt also attended on behalf of the schools to hear from some community members who did some presentations.
And Becca came.
Oh, Becca came as well, yeah, Becca Eastman, and hear different perspectives. And so that was a great opportunity and meeting. I think there was one thing that I think came up that I actually asked Don to work on for me today, and I wanted to clarify. It was an interesting point that I wanted to make sure, because it was such a, was brought up as a fact, as a pretty strong fact, that I wanted to clarify. And what was stated at the meeting was by one of the presenters that Yellow Springs is #1 in taxes when you look at everything from property taxes to income taxes, and you put it all together in a formula. Yellow Springs is at the top of the list, above Oakwood even. And then if we put a levy on the ballot and then we pass it, we'd be above everybody else and that kind of thing. So I asked Dawn to really look at this, because from our discussions that had never been the case. We hadn't seen that at all. And so she really worked hard on it today. And as we looked at it, for the entire Clark, Greene, Montgomery County area, Yellow Springs ranks 11th when you include property and income taxes together. And I think that's important for Carol, for you to hear, because Audrey was at the meeting and she might be writing a story about it next week. So can you please pass that on to her so she knows that there's a difference of opinion about that, and that it's actually, from our data, it shows that we're 11th and not even close to #1. And I think that's important to point out because we want to make sure that the community has the accurate facts about what's actually happening. So
Is that something?
it's not on there. I have it here in front of me, but it is on the webpage. So Don can pull that up and we can share that. And actually, if you wanted me to show it, we can pull it up now.
So the person who presented that also wrote a piece of the paper that
Right.
sort of duplicates what was mentioned last night as well.
That's a great point. So Chad Runyon he kind of presented that, and he wrote an article in the newspaper editorial that also stated, and that was the first line in the editorial, was that we were #1 in taxes, and we don't believe that's accurate from our data collection, from what we know. And so I think it's important and incumbent upon the newspaper to tell the other side of the story with this issue if you can, and at least share what we have in terms of our data as ranked number 11 out of 33 school districts. So it's probably the top of the middle third, if you will, is where we place. Behind Oakwood, Northridge, Kettering, Dayton, Northmont, West Carrollton, Huber Heights, Trotwood, Madison, Mad River, Miamisburg. All of those districts are in front of us in terms of the amount of taxes they collect on a millage basis from their community for schools. So I just wanted to share that. I think so this process is moving along great. Hopefully we'll have some results from the survey soon, and we'll be able to start moving forward with some decision making over the next month or so. Any questions about that? Okay. You're welcome. So I want to talk about very briefly, if I can, the quality profile. So this is the second. It's a little big. This is the second year of the quality profile that we've done here, and we're pretty proud it's progressed. And Don's done a lot of work around this, and I want to recognize her for what she's done to help make this happen. And we think this is a better measure of what the community of Yellow Springs wants to evaluate how our kids are doing in school and what we're all about. We find that the standardized testing system and model is archaic, represents an old model of doing things, and changes and shifts every single year and has from year to year. And frankly, it's not dependable, and it doesn't represent, I think, the values of our community and what we believe here in Yellow Springs is important for our kids. So we created the quality profile to essentially figure out a way to capture that. A couple things that are different this year than last year. Because of some survey data, we were able to kind of get a little bit more qualitative data than we had before, or quantitative data too, you know, from the kids and from teachers and from community members, and so that was really helpful for us. And so I'm just going to highlight a few things, if you don't mind. So first of all, 2017 marked the high school's 4th appearance in the last 5 years in the best high schools list for the U.S. News and World Report, which is largely based on some standardized testing data and AP test scores. Yellow Springs High School ranked number 1 in Greene County, number 2 in the Miami Valley behind Oakwood, and number 25 out of, I believe, 800 high schools in the state of Ohio, and in the top 3% in the entire nation. So our teachers are doing great work. I want to point that out. You've heard about the AP District Honor Roll distinction, but I think that's a really important thing to highlight. Very few schools get this honor statewide and nationally, but it's for schools who not only perform well in AP, but have a higher representation or growth in number of minority students taking AP tests, and then score well on top of that. And so we're proud of that honor because it, to me, again, represents the values of our community of diversity and ensuring that our kids are successful no matter their background or where they come from. And that's something we're really proud of in Yellow Springs. So average ACT scores, I mean, you know, so there's all these standardized tests you can look at from reading and math all the way up from 3rd grade on up. But one of the things that I think is important is, you know, at the end of the day, when kids graduate, what are they doing when they graduate and they leave our schools? And that's important. You look at the average ACT score for Yellow Springs high school students at 24.9 compared to the state average of 22. So we're doing significantly better than state average in terms of the ACTs and you know, and that. So 100% of the class of 2016 graduated in 4 years. That's a super impressive achievement. Most schools are in the low 90s in that regard, and we've had actually 2 years in a row where we've graduated 100% of students, and that's a huge lift, and high school teachers deserve a ton of credit for that because they're building great relationships with kids. We've had some really good interventions to help students succeed, and you know, go forward from there. I also like the college remediation rates, which I think is telling as well. Maybe even a better indication of how we do. Just 6% of Yellow Springs grads are requiring remedial English or math according to the standard classes in college. That compares with the state average of 31% in 2016. So I think we're doing well in that regard also. I'm not just going to talk about the good things, I'll talk about a few things that I think are a little concerning to me. So this question of 2 out of 3 Yellow Springs high school students feel challenged to meet high expectations at school. I know high school students are our toughest critics, but I'm not happy with 66% in that number. I want to see that go up, and so I'm really interested in finding out what can we do to kind of delve into that more over the next few months and kind of dig into that, see why that's the case, and figure out what we can do differently around that.
Can I just offer a gratuitous thought?
Please, yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if some of that doesn't precisely have to do with the way College Credit Plus drains off students, especially in the junior and senior year, and so you're getting this weird distortion effect because a lot of kids are opting not even to be in the building, and that may affect some of this as well.
Sure, yeah, that could be a factor. So if you look at the next one, which is looking at our teachers and our educators, the Deeper Learning Training Center, we know about that work, we've talked a lot about that, but to emphasize that in 16-17, 175 educators from 30 different Ohio school districts came to Yellow Springs schools to see the work we're doing, because the work our teachers and students are doing is being recognized statewide and actually now nationally in ways that we've not seen. And so we're delivering workshops, and actually we now have teachers signed up in November. 2 middle school teachers are going to be going to Northridge Middle School to give a workshop to their teachers about project-based learning and the work we're doing there. And so They asked us to do that, so we're sending them there. I'm pretty proud of this statistic below to the right, the big one, you can see that staff satisfaction. You know, that's a 96% of staff rate PBL as an effective instructional approach, and that 87% of staff feel inspired to do the best work. You know, I think the 96% figure is really important because oftentimes when you go through a major change initiative in any school district like we have, it is really hard to get buy-in in the short term, and it takes a long time to do this. Because of our long-term commitment to this work, and the fact that we've been doing this now for 5 years, and the fact that from inception we included our teachers in the process of working through this and determining where we're going to get our professional development, I think that has a lot to do with this, and then giving them the space to learn, and that's been really powerful. And I have to give the board a ton of credit for this, because if it weren't for our Board of Education, that would not be possible. And the reason is because our Board of Education has given our teachers the space to do the work they have to do, and has not hounded us about standardized test scores or, you know, jumped all over the state report cards and really emphasized, you know, those rates, because I think the board has a broader perspective of where we're going and what we're trying to do, and has a higher standard for our schools. And honestly, that is more powerful than you can possibly imagine for our teachers. And I see Eli shaking his head in agreement back there. So a couple things about our community very quickly. Well, so the Power of the Pin team, you heard about their great work this year in middle school, sweepstakes trophies, which is the #1 trophy you can get. They did incredibly well in the regional competition, and even beyond that, we introduced Girls on the Move, which is focusing on enhanced self-esteem, physical fitness, and problem solving for girls in elementary school. A great after-school activity for them. I think that went well. Lego League is constantly expanding and still expanding. I like this stat. If you look at the expenditures, I think the community gets a great bang for their buck. You may not be able to read it, but what it says is that in per pupil expenditures, so we talked about where we rank statewide on the U.S. News and World Report Best High Schools rankings. So if you look at the top 25 schools and school districts in that ranking system, and you figure out how much do they spend on average per student in their schools, those top 25 districts on average spend $13,054 per student. Yellow Spring School spends $1,500 less at $11,550 per student. So the community of Yellow Springs is getting a great bang for their buck with our students and the education we give them. And we are doing, you know, we're, as Steve has said sometimes, we're punching well above our weight. And we're proud of our teachers and the kids for what they're doing. And so you can see the growth in open enrollment. Actually, to be quite honest with you, that number could be all the way up to 250 if we wanted to right now. But we actually really put a curbing and capped a lot of that this year, and had to turn down a lot of families for open enrollment this year, because we feel like we're at a number that we're probably at the maximum we can take right now in our school district. So that's about where we're going to stay going forward because of space. And we don't want to, the goal of open enrollment again is not to create more classrooms, it's to fill the classrooms that are already in existence now. So if you have a class size of 15 kids that are in district, well, we want to maybe add 5 or 6 more seats to that class of open enrollment kids. We can do that, and that brings in those 6 kids $36,000 more for us and helps increase our revenue while not adding teachers or classrooms in the process. So I think it's great in the end for our community. So, and then you've heard about our fundraising efforts before. So any questions about this from anybody or comments? Or
I just two quick things. First, just on your last point, I would also just want to emphasize that our open enrollment students are some of the best kids that we have, and once they're in the district, they're just like our district kids, and I think we're lucky to have them. They've chosen to come to these schools, and they make a great contribution. This issue or this version of our report happened to have come out just before I was at the last Greene County meeting. So I mentioned it to everybody because everybody was grousing about the state report card and all of that. And I said, well, we tried to do something a little differently. They all wanted copies. Dave Deskins has taken it now to his superintendent's regional meeting. Everybody in the Greene County consortium really impressed with this and maybe looking to try to do some of the same sort of thing, because I think everybody's a little fed up and a little tired of the usual kinds of standardized test rankings and all the stuff that comes out of the state, which is pretty frustrating. So I think this is gonna have an impact.
Yeah, I think something like 90% of the school districts in the state of Ohio got Fs on this year's report
Yeah, I
card.
think that's
So,
approximately right.
Really a fair system, you know, so.
Well, that point doesn't mean anything.
Right, exactly.
It doesn't provide any information that's useful.
Okay, so that's all I have to share.
Well, thanks, I appreciate you doing that. Thank you for your acknowledgement of our,
Yes.
too. Appreciate that too. All right. We are moving into the administrative portion of the consent calendar, 4.2 through 4.5. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
All righty. That includes a second reading of a policy, the 8th grade trip, memorandum of understanding for United Society coming back, and then a first policy reading regarding class rank. So, Kenny?
Yes, I would love to say a couple of things.
Yeah.
First of all, you heard about the 8th grade trip, so I'm not going to comment on that. But the memo of understanding with United Society, it's not complete yet. We're still waiting to hear. YCA still has some work to do around it. So we're just going to take our end here, and then they'll work it out on their end. And yes, sir.
United Student Society. That was a change.
I'm glad you said that. You said it just in the nick of time, too. So Don is changing it officially on the agenda, so you're approving the United Student Society, not United Society. Okay. This is a organization that was established years ago, went away sometime in the early 2000s, I think, but it remained in the contract, and we removed it from the contract because we didn't know really what it was about. We hadn't been using it. We just didn't know. And it turns out last year, you know, talking to John Gudgel and some other folks, we found out that the purpose of this organization was to increase the diversity in the school district, to promote diversity, to promote understanding, shared understanding between different kids and cultures, and really do some work around that. And we thought this is really important and needed right now. And so we felt it absolutely essential to bring it back. And so we did last year, but it was not funded. And so here's a chance now to fund it, get it to be part of the contract again. I think it's essential for our work. That group has done a lot already last year, and they're going to continue to do some of that work. Jamie Adolph is the sponsor, and so we're pleased with what's going on. So we have to get this approved. I think it's really important going forward for our kids and their advocacy within the school. Board policy 4.5, first reading is a class rank policy. So this is the one policy the board has to change to approve the suggestions that Tim's making. And when you look at the policy, I could probably pull it up right now, but I think it's a really short policy.
It's in them.
Yeah, it's in the minutes. It's a short policy, and it actually says that we don't do class rank, you know, which is kind of fascinating. It tells me that, I apologize, it seems like we've not been following that policy
Right.
for a while now, you know, which is fascinating. And we weren't supposed to be following class rank anyway, except when it referred to valedictorian and salutatorian, which is kind of fascinating because you kind of have a class rank if you're using it for val and sal. So we just have to remove that portion that talks about val and sal, and that's really about it. And then the rest of the policy holds firm, and everything else we do would be under AGs.
I think I recall when we took that
Oh, did
out was, and the reason was we were doing away with honor roll and merit roll and
Interesting.
things like that.
That sounds vaguely familiar because I know, but I did.
It's a really small policy too. It's kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
So unless you have any questions, that's all I have.
No, you just need student in the MOU draft also. It says United.
Oh, in the actual
It
draft.
says United Society. in
Okay,
there.
we'll change it. Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Anybody else? No? Okay, roll call.
Anne,
Yes.
Aida,
Yes.
Sylvia,
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes. We're into the personnel portion of the consent calendar, 4.6 through 4.7. Is there a motion, please?
So moved?
Second.
Yeah, this looks pretty
Yep.
self-explanatory.
Yeah, the only thing I want to comment on is Title IV. So this is a new money that we got, and actually we didn't even really know much about Title IV before this year, and suddenly we got this mysterious Title IV funding that came from the federal government after cutting a significant amount of our Title I budget, which federal budgets for schools have been cut tremendously the past 5 years or so. But this year particularly, we got a huge cut in education spending, and so they allotted some funds to us through this new Title IV fund, and so this is a way we think we can use it and bring back a new form of tutoring, because it can't be the same, I don't think, and so this is sort of a new paraprofessional tutoring model that we're using for Title I, essentially, students who need extra support in reading help, so that's what that's for. And then Kathy Birkland, just FYI, that's tutors specifically for students that are English language learners. So we have a few of those students in our school district that need extra support and help, and so that's what that's for.
It's really awesome to have her back.
I was gonna say,
We have to once again change,
Yeah.
we have to once again change Jamie Adolph to say United Student Society.
Yes, right, exactly.
Oh,
This is gonna keep going, I think.
All right, and we have Leslie on there again.
Yeah, Leslie Shepherd's actually getting approved this month, yeah, and so I think they took care of everything last month,
Confusion,
so,
yeah.
which is good.
All right, roll call.
Aida,
Yes.
Sylvia,
yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Ann.
Yes.
Okay, moving into board communications. So we need to set a work session date, executive session date for ISEA negotiations. Can we do that? We'll have schedules available or kind of a sense of,
Well, is this an ASAP, or is this it has to happen in the next several months?
I think next several weeks.
Several weeks, okay?
Tomorrow.
So we're just breaking up the sleeping bags, we'll be just.
What are you doing this afternoon?
Okay.
gosh.
We would appreciate it in the next few weeks, I think that would be nice.
Well,
So what about the third Thursday of the month? I don't know what that looks
Of
like.
this
for
month?
folks. I mean,
The
the fourth
19th?
Thursday, the 26th instead.
26th.
Isn't that Thanksgiving?
Some of us
No.
already have
Oh, this
meetings
month.
scheduled
October,
with,
right. Sorry.
about the day of, the student day of empowerment.
Oh,
That's
okay,
it.
that's that date?
Yeah, although it could happen later. It's at 5:30.
I can't do that either.
Okay.
No, I don't.
What about the 19th?
Yes, exactly.
Actually, that's the candidates forum.
No,
No, the
candidates forum is on the
18th,
18th.
but that's,
Is it?
the candidates for.
It depends which
Council.
candidates you're
The-
talking
right,
about.
it's the
Yeah,
council
Yeah, so
and
there's
mayor on
council,
the 19th.
mayor,
Oh,
whatever,
okay, gotcha.
but I'm not here anyway.
Yeah. Some of us aren't campaigning.
Right.
I'm not, I'm getting sent out of town for work, even though we don't go out of town for work anymore. It's the
Probably Halloween is.
What about that week of the 23rd? Any evenings then?
week of the 23rd.
I could do the 26th, did we just say
We
that
just
was,
nixed
we
that.
nixed that
Well,
one?
if it's later, it's probably fine.
That's not so great for me, but you
Yeah.
know, if I was the
So-
only one, I'd make it work.
The,
The 19th works for me, and 23rd, 4th, or 5th works for me.
Well, yeah, great.
20, I could do the 20, are we only talking about evenings? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
It's up to you all.
Well, I think so because of their schedules.
well, the 23rd and the 25th are out entirely
Okay.
for me. So the 24th, I think I have some flexibility there.
I could do the
I can
24th.
do early, I could do during the day on the 24th.
Okay.
Are you going to Art Street on the 24th?
5 o'clock, but I can always change it.
Okay. All right, well, I could do before 4:15. So,
During the day.
on the 24th, yeah.
Can everybody else meet during the day on 24th? See, what about you?
On the-
Yeah,
After-
yeah.
I'll double check that.
Like 12:30 afternoon, yeah.
Mhm.
All right, maybe we should tentatively plan for 1 o'clock.
Mhm.
1 o'clock on the 24th.
I'm gonna give this to you just so that I don't walk away with it.
Okay.
At 1 PM on the
Kind of
24th.
put 1 to 3 in your calendar for the 24th, just to be safe. And, does that work for you too, Don?
And when will we know for sure?
Well, I'll have to check.
We'll have to check with Sean.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Sean's
Sean's
on
out of
Art
town.
Street, but
I
I need to
tried-
double
okay.
check.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
We should do a couple.
Because,
If he can't make it, then what we've done is not, we just.
If he can't make it, we'll just do a doodle.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what?
I think if Sean can't make it, we'll do a doodle.
Oh,
I'll give him a heads up,
Yeah.
and then hopefully he'll say yeah.
so we're not gonna pick a couple right now, we're gonna try for that one and then, okay.
Yeah.
I just think that's probably better.
Okay, great. Okay, very good.
So if we, and the other thing is, if we don't have Aida's, if we don't have anybody that nominates potentially tonight, we can wait, we can do it at that meeting.
Right
But
on.
it's gonna need to be a special meeting then at that point, instead of a work session. Because that'll be a board action.
Yep.
So,
Well,
Oh,
okay.
wait, okay.
Does anybody wanna volunteer?
I mean, I think the only thing I was gonna say about it is there would be some usefulness to the, to continuity from last time, but I'm not gonna arm wrestle someone for it. But, the only other part that I was thinking about is you talked about November, so then it would, be about when in November? Because there's
Yeah, it would be,
Thanksgiving, there's,
I think it's,
OSBA.
yeah, so that's, and Eli and I were talking about that same issue.
Yeah.
There's a few, November's a little tough, so we might try to do it before Thanksgiving, or right before Thanksgiving, or right after, so that weekend, so so the week after Thanksgiving, or maybe the week before, would be sort of the hope. But
for like
again,
to find 2 days
yeah.
in
so-
that time
and I
period.
think-
To do the negotiation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Which sort of feeds back to who would be
Yeah.
part of it. I would like to, but I don't want to be cutting somebody out
I
who
mean, I
wants
think
to.
your willingness is great, and I
Okay.
think, and,
Did Sean say he was interested at all, or?
We could
he
tell,
did.
we could say that he was.
No, he did, it was just a matter of scheduling. So
I think
I'll
in some ways
communicate.
also Sean and I have less going on
Yeah.
right now, board related, that, I mean, not globally, but in
Yeah.
terms of board related, that might be a good reason for it to be the two of us, if that worked for him.
I could be an alternate maybe, but during the day it's just.
Yeah, it makes it tough.
Yeah.
Well, and depending on when it is, I can also step in.
Great,
So,
okay,
so I will communicate with Sean about both of
Okay.
those things and
Okay.
try to get some.
okay. So we'll make
figure
it,
out.
we'll make it a special meeting, so,
Okay.
for that reason.
Okay, so this is the board work session, is team building at Capitol Conference, which is this year, November 12th to 14th. I'm just going to announce that we'll be there, and
Yeah,
it's full of us.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's good. All right, Green County Career Center report.
Well, so greetings from the Career Center, and it might surprise you to learn that we're thinking about facilities and strategic planning. It turns out that our building is also falling apart. It's about the same vintage as parts of our facilities here. In particular, our dilemma is, the HVAC system, which was so problematic, and at this point would cost an enormous amount of money to repair as it is. And so that question of good money after bad and, sort of penny wise and pound foolish. So we've begun a discussion, and I'm afraid I'm involved in it, about looking at a strategic, and doing another strategic plan. There've been a couple at the Career Center that I'm afraid over the last 2 decades that wound up on shelves collecting dust, and I think now the question is, what can we do here that would actually have some impact? So that's my report from down the road.
Thank you. Okay, and any board member items?
I was just gonna say our fall sports teams are getting into postseason play, so try to keep track of that and support them if you can. And the Bulldog Theater Festival was mentioned earlier, and I guess my pitch along those lines would be, since it's a different model where you're used to having one fall play, that you have 2 weekends to try to access, please try to support these 2 different plays. That'll be 2 different weekends this year, and they run Thursday through Sunday each weekend. The last group of dates in October and first group of dates in November.
And there's a current warmer on.
Oh yes, and there's a curtain warmer to support the theater program on Saturday, October.
28th.
Saturday 28th.
I think it's the
Yeah,
28th.
Saturday, October 28th. There's a curtain warmer to support the whole theater program. It lines up with the Saturday night performance at Mills Lawn of The Last Lifeboat, which is a Titanic history themed play that has a cast of 8th through 12th graders. So you can support that by going to a reception at Morgan House ahead of time, and then having reserved seats right across the street for the show Saturday night. And then the subsequent weekend is Eurydice, that's 11th and 12th graders, showcase performance, and it'll be at the Glen building.
So I would like to acknowledge our superintendent, who is acknowledged by the Buckeye Association of Superintendents with a pretty special award, which I'm going to let him explain because I don't fully understand it, but except that it's a pretty generous and sweet award.
So BASA, Buckeye Association for School Administrators, is an organization of superintendents, and I haven't even said this to Eli, I don't think yet. But I was awarded the honor of, they do 2 or 3 sponsorships every year of a trip as part of a global leadership, student leadership summit that's done through EF, or Education First. And this year's trip is to Germany. It's valued at like $5,000 this trip, and so they are sponsoring me and 2 other superintendents from the state to go to Germany for this Global Student Leadership Summit. We're going to go for 10 days and we'll tour Germany, and then the best part is going to be the end, where we kind of participate in this Global Leadership Summit, where you'll have literally students from all over the world gathering together in Berlin, and they're all going to be working on solving some major problems related to technology, and that's the main topic. And it sounds like PBL a little bit, and then they present on their problem and their solution. It's really a giant project-based learning endeavor globally, and all these kids, it's great, kids from everywhere, all over the world. They get kind of mixed up in a group together, and it's just this fascinating opportunity. And I think one of the things we want to do is we want to go out, graduate Yale Springs, the global change leaders of the future. And if that's what we think is important, I think it's not only good for me to get this opportunity so that I can have a feel and understanding of what it's actually like to be a global citizen a little bit and have a taste of it, but that our kids have had these opportunities now, and they're taking their second trip, thanks to people like Eli and Elizabeth, this spring. And they're going to Peru, Machu Picchu, for a surface learning trip, and it's going to be amazing for those kids. And what we're trying to do in the long run, so I'm sorry, I keep going on, but this is my final point, is this is a great chance for people to sponsor students for a trip like this. And so Don's working a little bit on that to try to really get going, but at the end of the day, we want all of our kids to be able to take these international trips. It's expensive, but we think people in the community might be interested in sponsoring kids. And if you are, this is super important. If we want to graduate global citizens, they need to have global experiences. And so what a great opportunity. Let's see if we can get all our kids to do it. And right now, how many kids are on the trip?
It's 30 students.
30 students out of yeah. 200, yeah, so it's great.
That's fantastic. Well, anyway, congratulations.
Yes, it's a great honor.
It is.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, I think we're ready to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
It's kind of student driven, so we went with Harrison Road, it's kind of student choice.